Wait, I have something to tell you. Wait. Yes, it's me, Sahaana. And no, I'm not an expert on evictions, so naturally, I've decided to talk about it. So I've read a ton of articles. I've read tip sheets. I've talked to organizations. Literally anything to make me feel less overwhelmed. I'm going to share with you what I know. Let's get into it. One common eviction scenario is when a landlord gives a tenant an N12. This means the landlord or their immediate family wants to move into the unit, or they are selling the whole property, including your unit. The landlord should compensate at least 1 month of rent or offer you another rental unit that is acceptable to you. The landlord also needs to give you 60 days notice using the N12 form for their application to the Landlord Tenant Board to evict you. The termination date on the N12 needs to be the day before you pay rent. So if you pay rent on the first of the month, then the termination date on the N12 needs to be the last day of the previous month. Reminder, this does not mean you need to move out by the termination date. If you remain in your unit past the termination date listed on the N12, then the landlord needs to file an L2 form to the Landlord Tenant Board. This can be no later than 30 days after the termination date listed on the N12. An L2 form is a legal application submitted to the LTB. It's an application to evict a tenant or end a tenancy. The application will prompt the legal process for an eviction, which will then lead to a hearing where you can defend your tenancy.
When a tenant gets a form like an N12, is they see it, they're like, oh shoot, I gotta move out by the termination date on the N12, and then they move out. So the landlord knows that's what usually happens. They know that they usually never have to file anything with the landlord tenant board. All they really have to do is give their tenant the N12 form, and most of the time the tenant will leave of their own volition. So a lot of the time, landlords will use that to their advantage, and they won't actually even have any intention of following up at the landlord tenant board. So if the tenant calls their bluff and they don't move out, the landlord won't actually do anything. They won't take it to the landlord tenant board. They won't try to continue the eviction process. And so that is one of the many ways that landlords can get tenants out without actually having to do a lot of legwork.
If your landlord is selling the property, including your unit, the landlord actually cannot evict you unless the buyer is looking to move into the unit. So basically, when a landlord sells a home, the rental unit is automatically transferred to the new owner under the same conditions. This means the landlord cannot increase your rent and you do not need to sign a new rental agreement. If you thought for 1 second I'd be listing all of my resources in the bio, you'd be correct. It's going to be linked in a little document called the Totally Non-Extensive Guide to Eviction. All this leaves is one more common eviction scenario. Next time, we're going to explore the big one, N13s.